Hello, everybody. Welcome here to Prog Monster. Excuse me for a sec. Forgot my hat. I don't want to blind y'all. Anyways, I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So, this show is called Into the Progverse. Basically, it just explored different progressive rock topics. So I had one in mind when I did this week on Sunday, but Ben suggested a follow-up to last week's The Big Six, which I thought made more sense to do it now than to do the one that I was going to do and then do it later. I think we'll just do it now. And so this one will be basically, I've picked 6 other bands that I think could have been one of those bands in that group of the big group, or the Big Six as they call them. So we all know who the Big Six are: Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, and who's the other one? Did I say Jethro Tull? I think I did. Try that again. Yes, Jethro Tull, Genesis, Pink Floyd, King Crimson, and God, I can't remember the last one. Oh, ELP, of course. I forgot them. So those are the Big Six of prog rock. We had a discussion about that last week when we were talking about why they were the Big Six and the parameters that they were. So most of those 6 bands, well, all of those 6 bands came out in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, and into the early 70s, and were all British bands. So if we were going to replace one of them or replace all of them, who would be the bands that we would do that with? So I decided we would stick with their contemporaries, so other bands that were out at roughly the same time as these 6 bands. So that late 60s to early 70s. So that kind of excludes Rush for those of you who think I might go that route. I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to try and stick with the European set. Most of 5 of the 6 bands are actually English or Scottish or British, if you prefer. And one of the bands is German. So we're going to get into the band. So I'm going to start. There's no particular order here. I'm just going to talk about each of the 6 bands, a little bit about each of them, how many of their albums I have, why I like them, what type of music it is, that kind of stuff. Nothing spectacular, but one of those bands I think could have made that Big Six is this band, Hawkwind. Now, some people would say this band is not a progressive rock band. Yeah, I guess in the strictest sense of the word, they might not be. They may be more space rock, but then space rock to me falls under progressive rock. So, or at least under the general theme of progressive rock, even though many people don't consider space rock progressive rock. They consider it space rock. Makes sense, right? But Hawkwind has had many different styles to the music. They're one of the most prolific rock bands for making albums in history. They made their first album in 1970 and have pretty much made albums every year. Not always studio albums, but they have almost as many live albums as they do studio albums. I chose this one out of the stack just because it was the one I grabbed. I like most of their studio stuff. I don't have, or I didn't have, any of their live albums, but that'll be rectified when I do my new albums purchased this week. I believe I purchased one live album. There might be a second one there, but I think it's just one. So really, this band, very spacey. Lots of different sounds to their music over the years. They've been a little new wave-ish at times, punky at times as well, progressive, psychedelic, all kinds of different sounds to their music, but always with this core kind of space rock stuff going on throughout. Even some of the punky albums have a little bit of that spacey rock sound to it. I have listened to every Hawkwind album at least once. When I was going through the list of albums I wanted to, or bands I wanted to listen to, I went through a period of time where I was listening to the entire discographies of different bands, and I have listened to all of their albums. I think their earliest albums, maybe the first 5 or 6, are their best ones, but they do have some later stuff that's pretty good too. This one I don't mind. I didn't initially like it. This is a double album. I guess I could have included this on my double albums, but I didn't. And as you can see, there are 2 discs here. So you've got disc 2 and disc 1. Lots of good stuff on this album. It's a pretty, by Hawkwind standards, it's got a little bit more of that hard rock metal sound to it than a lot of the others. It's also very spacey, lots of symphonic sounds going on here. Yeah, the band itself have way more members than I could ever want to mention. Like they've had, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 70 to 80 members have been members of the band. The only constant with the band would be Dave Brock, who's the guitarist, vocalist. He's the founding member. So the band was founded in November of 1969 and produced their first album in 1970. Their debut self-titled album that came out in 1970. They are an English band, of course. They've had many members. Many of them have left and come back and then gone out again. You know, they've had people like I think Ginger Baker actually played for them on a few albums. I know that Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead was in the band in one of in the beginning era. Yeah, just a strong band, lots of good stuff. So, do I think they could have made it? Well, yeah, they didn't have the popularity that those 6 had. Maybe they might have had more popularity than King Crimson, but they didn't achieve that kind of commercial success. Although they've had multitudes of albums on the charts in England. I think they went through a period like from the beginning to about mid 1990s or early 1990s where every single one of their studio albums made the charts. They've had a few songs that have had some radio notoriety and people know them from that. But I wouldn't call these guys a commercial giant. However, I do like them a lot. They're a band I can listen to fairly regularly. And I've had fair number of their albums in my playlist as well. So I think they could easily be put into the Big 6, maybe replacing King Crimson. Hard to say. I don't think you could take Jethro Tull or Pink Floyd or Genesis or Yes out of that, or ELP. So it's basically who would replace King Crimson. And not that King Crimson is not as talented as any of those other bands. And in some ways, I think they may be the most talented of those 6 bands. But they didn't have the commercial success that the other 5 did. And so they could be they may have been throwing in there to make it a 6, and any one of these other 6 could replace them on that list. So the next band up is probably my favorite of these bands here, and that's Gentle Giant. So Gentle Giant came to existence in 1970. They came from the kind of poppy band, psychedelic poppy band called Simon Dupuis, which had the three Showman brothers, Derek, Ray, and Phil. So the 3 Showman brothers came and formed this band in 1970. A strong band. I think if you were going by talent for the Big 6, they're going to be in the top 3, I think. ELP, yes. Gentle Giant. I think those, to me, King Crimson. arguably those four, then I guess maybe Genesis and Jethro Tull, maybe not quite in the same instrumental league as those other four, but it's all subjective. Anyways, I think anyway, this band definitely would be one of the best of instrumental, definitely the most multi-layered, multi-instrumentalist band out there. Some absolutely killer tracks, very uncommercial though. They never made it big because of their lack of commercial success. And I don't think they were ever at a point where they were going to push the commercial envelope and make that jump. I don't think they were made to be that way. And actually, in some ways, I think that's a good thing, because if they had made that commercial jump, like Yes or Genesis had, maybe they wouldn't be as iconic as they are. I think I like their music the way it is. It doesn't necessarily matter to me that they didn't sell as many albums as the others. Their music is just as good, in some cases better. Some of their album covers, this one's good, but some of their album covers aren't so good either. But, very, very talented guys. If I was doing my big six, they would be one of them for sure. I hope I would like to have seen them get a little bit more attention than they got, just for their own sakes. So they formed in 1970, like I said. The Showman Brothers are Scottish, and their debut album, which was a self-titled album, came out in 1970. So their first four albums had the Showman Brothers all on it. I think that, to me, is the Showman Brothers era. And then you have the second era, which kind of took place starting with in a Glass House, where Phil Showman was, well, we call it the Phil Showman era, the non-Phil Showman era. I do like the non-Showman Phil Showman era as well. In a Glass House, maybe their best album. I won't know until I've actually put it on the playlist. It's the one I've been trying to get the most and haven't been able to. It took a while to get Octopus as well, but I do have the first four. I love them all. I haven't played this one. I've played it a few times, but it hasn't made my playlist yet, but it eventually will. They all will. They're all just too good to ignore. And I have a few others that I haven't picked up either, later ones. So hopefully I'll get them all before the end of the year. And maybe we'll even do a ranking. But for me, I think they could easily be one of the big six, and there would be no argument about them being in there for me. Anyways, maybe other people might. So the next band up is this one, Caravan. This album is the only one I own. I have tried to get others, but they're not easily found where I am. They don't even have. So where I go, they have basically two sections, well, three sections to their store. They have the used section, which has almost all used CDs, both regular CD, and the metal section has a little section by itself at the end. Then they also have new CDs, which go alphabetically all around. And then they have a strictly metal section as well. And then they have their vinyl section, which isn't terribly big, but it does have it. They have another section to the store with lots of box sets and stuff in there as well. There's a book section. It's not too big. And then there's a jazz and jazz fusion section as well. But so whenever I go there, I always look through all the used stuff first, and then I go through the new stuff. And there's never anything by Caravan, which is unfortunate, because I would love to have them. This was the only one they had. It was in the used section, and I bought it. So eventually I'll have them all, because I just think they're a super band. They definitely were close to making that jump, I think, to that commercial success. They're a little bit quirky. Their lyrics are very quirky and very kind of motivated by sexual innuendo in a lot of cases. The artwork on this particular album is fantastic. Some of their album titles are a little bit goofy as well, but I love the vocals on this particular album and the stuff I've listened to. I love the instrumentation. It's quite good, especially the keyboards. The keyboards kind of surprised me. I didn't think they were going to be dominated by keyboards, but they do have a lot of really good stuff. Their songs are very catchy. Took a while for me to get into them, but then I just couldn't listen to this album enough. Yeah, I would have definitely put these guys, they definitely had to be considered to be a band to make that big six. Um, they formed in Canterbury in 1968 from a band called the Wildflowers. And then they released their self-titled debut album in 1969. Basically, the Sinclairs were the main characters in here. They've had other members as too. I guess I could even tell you who was in here if you were interested in knowing. I love both the front and the back of this album. You get the whole picture when you see this. It's fantastic, fantastic. So you've got Richard and David Sinclair on here, Pi Hastings and Richard Coughlin. Those are the original four, and then they've added Jimmy Hastings and David Grinstead to this album as well. So I do not know the family ties between any of these guys. I'm not as familiar. This is a band that's relatively new to me over the last year. So I haven't, and usually I get more into them as I get more of their albums, but I still only have this one. So I'm hoping to get more. I think these are an excellent band. I don't know why it took me so long. People kept telling me, "Oh, you're going to like it. Go get it." And I just kept putting it off and putting it off. And the first couple times I listened to it, I didn't like it. And then people kept pushing me, so I kept going. But yeah, great band. Could easily make that maybe the most commercial successful of the bands that we're going to be discussing today. I think them and Hawkwind, probably the two most commercial successful of these six bands. Next up is Camel. This is the Breathless album. Just listened to this one for the first time the other day. Camel's a band that takes a bit for me to get into as well. They're a lot more mellow sounding than the other three bands that we've done thus far. Dominated by Pete Bardens and Andy Latimer. Sorry, I was drawing a blank there. So they came out in, just looking for my little bit of a note here so I don't forget it. Formed in Guildford, Surrey, in, of course, British Columbia, in Britain in 1971. Their debut album came out in 73, their self-titled debut album. So they are probably the newest of the six bands we're doing. They're just at the edge of where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go beyond 73, so that's why I chose them. This is a pretty solid album. Haven't listened to it too much. They have some stuff that I have listened to quite a bit that I like a lot. I just recently got God, sometimes my brain just doesn't work. Anyways, I recently got another album, and Breathless. Breathless came last month. Actually, I think Breathless came the month before, and the other one, whose name is eluding me at this moment, came last month. It's still waiting its turn to be listened to. I only have so much time, so I try to get them in if I can. So that's going to bother me. I have to look up the album. It's right here. Oh yeah, of course, Mirage. Mirage is the one that I got that's new. I think this could end up being their best album for me, and it gets rated very highly by most people. Moon Madness, Mirage, Snow Goose, those are all. I like the debut quite a bit myself as well. It's right up there. I liked it a lot. Could this band be in that group? I think they could be in there. There's two things that kind of hold them back, in my opinion. The vocals are not strong. I don't think they're terrible. I just don't think, compared to some of the other bands, they're just not as good. The other thing that holds them back is maybe they're not as aggressive as some of the other bands. They're more more in that kind of pastoral sound, although I wouldn't call them pastoral at all. They're not like farmer music or folk music or anything like that. Just very quiet, very soft, very kind of less aggressive, although Mirage is quite a bit more aggressive than some of the others. So I think it will end up being my favorite for that reason. But I think they could have made it. They just didn't have the commercial success as any of the other bands. Maybe not even as much as King Crimson. But a great, great band, solid in every way. Next up is going to be a band that has really grown for me over the last year. They started out really well, kind of not faded, but kind of slowed down a bit, and now they've come on again. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of their heavier stuff like this. They quite surprised me. So this is Eloy, a German band, came out in 1969, and their self-titled debut album in 1971. So they're the only non-British band of any of the bands we've done in this Big Six thing. I think if they had been, they never really made it in North America, which is probably hurt their cause. If they did very well in their native country of Germany, big band there, and had some success throughout Europe as well, but just never kind of made it over here. And I think a lot of that has to do is they don't really put out those kind of really catchy hits. They're like, in many ways, I think they're like Hawkwind. They got very space rocky, more Pink Floyd sounding than any other band that I've heard. Maybe better Pink Floyd sounding than Pink Floyd, to be honest, that sometimes. There's some of their albums are quite Floydish sounding. Great guitar, great keyboards. The drummer, fantastic. Rosenthal, fantastic drummer, I think. Just like they put it all together in this live album. You get to hear really the talent that you maybe don't hear as much on some of the studio albums, although studio albums are quite good too. There's lots to listen to there. The very, like I said, very space rockish and also very Floydish sounding. Could have easily made this list, I think. Even one hit, I think, would have made so much of a difference for them, but they just didn't do it here. I mean, they probably did very well in Germany, but over here in North America, you got to make it here or nobody even knows you exist. Right? But great band. I like them a lot. Could have done better if they maybe had a better vocalist. I think part of the reason the Scorpions did so well in the United States and stuff is because their vocalist is really strong and people accepted his vocal sound. Frank I like Frank and I'm used to his vocals, but I don't think he has the kind of vocals that get people too excited. But this particular album, really good, maybe one of their best. So I chose it for that. They do have some other stuff that I really like. Their albums are quite colorful too. If you want to see more on them, you can go back and look at my Eloy collection, which I did recently here on the live stream. But a band I think could have easily made it in there. And been one of the Big Six. So the last band we're going to talk about is very different than the others in a lot of ways as well. Lots of albums. I have quite a few of their albums now, maybe as many as 6 of them. This one's haven't even listened to it yet, other than on the internet. So this is Nectar, a Scottish-British band that made it big in Germany. Many people think of these as a German band. The name kind of hints towards that as well, but they're all British or Scottish in origin, all the members. Very strong. Probably the heaviest of any of these 6 we just discussed. I think they're the heaviest band. They're almost a progressive metal band in some ways. That's what comes to mind when I listen to them. At least the first couple that I bought, Tab in the, well, at least 2 of the first 3 I bought, Tab in the Ocean and Journey to the Center of the Eye, both very heavy, got a very heavy metallic sound to them. This is one of the few bands that has members of the group who are not actually musicians. They don't play. They don't play on stage. Mick Brockett, he does all the lighting. They're big on their lighting show, and so he is an actual member. That's his job, is to do that. Very psychedelic kind of flavor to their album covers, as you can see. Try to show you this side. Yeah, very kind of colorful, almost psychedelic. These guys are really good. I think they have probably the better stage show than a lot of these bands, but I don't know because I've never seen any of them live except for, I believe, trying to think if I have a video of one of them. I thought I had one of them, but I can't remember who it was. Anyways, strong album, this one, and the first two I think are fantastic. Tab in the Ocean and Journey to the Center of the Eye. Journey to the Center of the Eye is a concept album. So they started out with this huge concept album, and then some of the stuff that was left over, along with a couple of others, were added to Tab in the Ocean. Both fantastic albums. Some of their other stuff is quite good too. I currently have, is it Remember the Future? I think it's Remember the Future is currently just went into my playlist. So I'll probably have a lot more to say about that one once it's there for a while too. These are a band I quite like a lot. They were probably one of the first bands that I got into that I hadn't been into prior to starting this channel. They were one of the very first because I bought two of them right off the bat, Tab in the Ocean and Recycled. Recycled is a very different album than Tab in the Ocean, much more commercial sounding. They actually did have a little bit of a musical success across this pond with one of their albums, but it didn't explode. So could have easily been a big band over here too, but they just, I'm thinking they didn't have the promotional status, or maybe their album came out at just the wrong time, or I'm not quite sure what it was, but there was a couple of things there that kind of held them back. I think they would have done quite well here, especially in the early 70s when prog music was all the rage. Definitely a great band. I would easily see them being in that group of six. For me, they definitely would have probably been in there. I do like them quite a bit. They're right up there with Gentle Giant and King Crimson for me as far as bands I kind of got into on the channel. Yeah, absolutely killer band. So those are the bands that I've kind of chosen that were contemporaries of those original six big band prog bands, sorry. And so they all came out roughly the same period. Now we may do another episode of this at some point for other prog bands other than the contemporary late 60s, early 70s bands, and we could talk about some bands that are more modern that might be considered big six, maybe the modern six or something like that. You know, everybody talks about this, but I like these guys. I probably have almost, maybe not quite, but maybe 70 to 80% of the albums of these six bands compared to my 100% of the other six bands that were in the big six originally. So yeah, really good. I didn't say anything about Nectar's formation, so I want to say a little bit. So they were formed in Hamburg, Germany, even though they're British. That's where they got started. Their first album was a concept album, Journey to the Center of the Eye, released in 1971. The band formed in 1969, so they fall within that range as well. So those are my six choices. I'm sure there's some bands that other people would like there. I'm almost 100% sure that somebody's going to bring up the Moody Blues. It's going to happen. Has to happen. They're not a band I follow. I don't know what it is about the Moody Blues. I've tried listening to them on occasion. They don't really connect with me. There's a few progressive bands like that should connect with me, but they don't. ELP, the Moody Blues, Kansas, all these bands, great bands. Can't take anything away from them. They have as much talent, or maybe more talent, than a lot of these bands I've already talked about. They've had varying degrees of success. Easily, easily, I think Kansas and the Moody Blues have had more success than any of these six bands. Could easily be taking that one of those big six spots. I just don't listen to them. They're not bands that I would listen to. I've tried, especially with Kansas, many times, just haven't been able to do it. So I'm sure there's other bands that I'm not mentioning that people are going to bring up, and that's what this is all about. People talking about these great bands that gave us such a wide array of fantastic music. And if I didn't do this channel, if I had never done this channel, the six bands that I had just said, I would have never probably followed any of them, because I had a little skimming of a couple of them and just never really pursued it. It was because of the channel and because I wanted to present albums that people could talk about that I discovered all this stuff. So I'm grateful for that. So if anybody wants to add stuff to it, by all means, please do so. It would be great to hear from you all and hear what you have to say about these bands and about the Big Six, and about maybe other bands you think should make the Big Six from that particular period in time. I'm trying to stay away from bands that came out from like 74 on. We'll do a different episode for them later, but for now, we'll stick with this one. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit the like and subscribe. That's much appreciated. And if you got any comments, or you want to give me your list of six that you would kind of consider to put in the Big Six, that would be fantastic as well. So take care and have yourself a great day and a great evening. And we will see you next week when we'll be doing another episode. I'm not sure exactly what we do. We may do the episode that we were supposed to do this week that I put off in order to do this. So we might do that next week, or I may do a third one like this. We'll see what happens. Take care and have a good evening and good night and goodbye.